Fund. Just to kick things off by introducing myself, I'm Paul Hickson. I work for Somerset County Council as the Council's Strategic Commissioning Manager for Economic Development and Planning Services. Just to say a little bit about the purpose of this morning's session. It's a briefing and a question and answer session about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which we'll abbreviate doubtless as we run through the meeting to SPF or UK SPF. So acronym alert that we'll probably be doing that quite a lot as we go along. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund is a new government funding programme. In some senses, it replaces or is going to replace the European funds that we've been used to over a number of years. And in this context, Somerset has both an opportunity and a challenge. The opportunity is that we've been allocated a sum of money over the next 3 years conditionally from government, and that's something like £7 million for the core fund. The challenge is that we have to prepare a plan for the use of those funds, which government needs to approve on our behalf. So we have a task ahead of us to put that plan together. In that quest, Somerset County Council has been identified as the lead council, but we're very much working as Team Somerset with our district council colleagues to see this as a joint piece of work. To support us on the way, we've appointed a company called Stantec to help us with the work on the plan. You'll be hearing from Stantec colleagues as we get into the session in a moment. Just a little bit about how we plan to run things before I do that handover. So combination of how we'll manage the session and a few housekeeping arrangements, if that's okay. Firstly, to say that for the briefing, we'll be taking you through a series of slides to explain the background to the fund and what it's all about. There's opportunity as we move through that, guided by our presenters, to ask questions along the way. So in terms of housekeeping and practical matters, we're going to be recording the session so that it's there after the event for people to use and look at who haven't been able to join us today. So just bear in mind that we're recording it for that purpose. Just a little bit about kind of culture and behaviours, which sounds rather kind of strict and firm on a Friday morning, doesn't it? What I mean there is, if as we run through things, if people can switch their cameras off and their mics off, so that you know, we've got clear kind of broadcast for those presenting, and we can help with bandwidth. If at all possible, as when we pause for questions or in advance of that, if you could log things in the chat, team will be keeping a good eye on that as we go. Obviously, we fully understand if you don't have access to the chat, if you could raise hands or raise a question, but if at all possible, if we can use the chat for that purpose. I think that's all I want to say by way of introduction handovers before I kind of do the obliged thing and go off camera myself. I want to hand over to Ian Timms, who's here on behalf of the Stantec team this morning, to take us through the next steps in the session. Over to you, Ian. I think you might be on mute, Ian. The slides are up there.
Mute. It's because they muted me. It's okay now. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I can't see anybody because all I can see is my presentation. Okay, so yeah, good morning. So yeah, just starting again. Good morning to everyone. So I'm just going to run you through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. As Paul's already mentioned, that'll be shortened through the presentation to SPF. I was just going to talk to you about creating the Somerset investment plan. So today is an introductory session. Got my colleague Elliot Dommett with me, and Sam Harper and Alan Swan at some around before, and may pitch in as we go along. So that is us. So our programme for today's session, first of all, our objectives. So we're going to look to set out the context of the fund for you, talk a little bit about the roles and the process, how that will work. I'm then going to outline the national and the Somerset context for you, so give you some figures around that, some stats and kind of where that is. Going to introduce you to the three themes that are in the SPF. Going to run you through a delivery overview and how we're going to engage with everybody and keep that engagement going. We'll explain the timetable and the general approach, and then we're going to have some Q&A. As we are going to pause through the presentation, hopefully get you engaged on this wet Friday morning, and we'll see how that works. And we are monitoring the chat, so if you do have a question, just pop it in there and we'll try and answer it as we're going along. So yeah, just to give you a feel for the national context. So the UK SPF is replacing a number of EU programmes, and it is a mixture of revenue and capital. So nationally it's 2.6 billion, so quite a large investment. And the government's SPF priorities around these kind of four areas. And the first of those, obviously, is boosting productivity, paid jobs and living standards. And then we've got spread of opportunities and improving public services, restoring a sense of community, local pride and belonging, and then empowering local leaders and communities. So those are the kind of four themes of the SPF. And then the local investment plan, which needs to be produced, runs off three themes linked to these SPF priorities. So it's broken down into these three themes, which I'm going to talk to you a bit about later. So it's important to understand this links to levelling up, and we couldn't find a better way to present this. So we borrowed this image from the SPF, from the prospectus. And so this just really explains how things work together with the Levelling Up Fund. Got the overarching objective there, and then the investment priorities that come through into this into the Shared Prosperity Fund. So they are community in place, supporting local businesses, and then people and skills. And then we've got this overarching Levelling Up white paper mission, which is number 9 there. I won't read through the slide. And then we've got these different missions which closely align to the different investment priorities that are going to need to come through in the Shared Prosperity Fund investment plan. So the Somerset position is up on the slide here. So for those of you who aren't aware, the duration of the fund is a 3-year fund, and actually started in April this year. So it's going to run for the next 3 years. We have got an allocation of 7,263,300, and as mentioned on the slide, the Somerset County Council is responsible as the continuing authority. That's clearly laid out in the shared in the prospectus in some detail. And the plan has to be submitted by the 1st of August this year for approval. So it's a pretty quick process of putting that plan together for consideration by government. Just one point to mention: unlike other plans, town deals, etc., there's no match funding required. But it will assist the value for money position of the plan, and the table just shows you how the money's put together. And as I mentioned before, it is a mixture of revenue and capital. In fact, it's predominantly revenue in terms of the allocation. So that's the core allocation, and it is to be spent over those 3 years. So what does the plan have to look like? So it's got to describe the local context and the opportunities. So an evidence base, obviously the same as any other plan. That's something we're putting together at Stonetek. It needs to describe the types of interventions that may be funded and the outcomes that are expected from those. It then has to describe, give an overview of the delivery. So it needs to go through the process. So it needs to describe how will that be governed, what will project selection look like, what will the general approach be, and then the mechanisms for allocating funds out to projects and activities that might come from trying to address those themes. And the plan does need to be supported by stakeholders. So that's the start of that engagement today with yourselves. And the plan does need to take into account other funds and links to the wider different activities that are currently going on. You know, it has to cross-reference to things like the environmental agendas, so on that happening at the moment. This is where hopefully we'll wake everybody up. So how can you get involved and influence the plan? So what we want you to think about is which of the themes as we go through the presentation. So would your organisational group want to engage with and impact on? So what kind of areas would you want to tackle? What we want from you as well is if you've got any evidence or supporting information we can use to support the plan. So if you've carried out any studies or you've got anything that you think would help strengthen our case in the plan or support activity in the various different themes, in the 3 different themes rather, then that would be really, really helpful. We've got a email address at the bottom of the slides for those to be sent to. So that would be really helpful. And we're also seeking your kind of views on what would your favourite approach be in accessing the delivery funds. So think about funds you've accessed in the past, what worked and what didn't work. So what's the easiest way to get into the money? So we're going to take a little pause there and see if there's any questions on the chat, or if anyone's got anything that they want to throw into the discussion. I can see as with slides.
We've got a hand up. I'll unmute you, King.
Hiya, just a quick question. So if it's an allocation, what are the chances of us not getting the money? Is it just a case of there is a plan, it's a good plan, it's a rubbish plan, but it's a plan, we tick a box and we get the money?
Yeah, so the plans, sorry, is that Paul? Paul, you're going to get that?
I can jump in there, Ian, if you like. I think we're kind of in new territory here, Kinga. So it's not easy to give a straightforward answer to that. I mean, clearly, government will be looking for value for money. It will be looking for compliance with the levelling up white paper objectives, and it'll be wanting to be convinced that we can deliver what we're going to be saying we're proposing to do. And I think also, and that's, you know, valid in its own right, and it's a reason for us doing what we're doing today. They'll be wanting to make sure that the lead council has engaged genuinely and thoroughly with stakeholders and plans to maintain that relationship in the delivery of the plan as well. So I must admit I'm speculating. I don't think it's simply a case of a tick goes in a box. I think they will test plans and they will be stretching us. So we need to be diligent in what we do, and we need to be thinking very carefully about how the evidence that we have about our place matches the intentions that we set out in the plan. So judgments and assumptions there, but I do think we shouldn't treat it as a done deal. We need to put the work in, and we need to be covering the bases on all of those and perhaps other things as well.
Anything else there?
Great, thank you, Paul. No, we've not had any more questions through.
Okay, so if you just think about those questions, and then we'll carry on with the presentation. So, as mentioned earlier on, these are the 3 themes. So communities in place, supporting local business, and people and skills. So I guess what we're asking is, for your organisations, do you have any themes that you really want to impact on? So which of these themes do you think you could carry out some activity in, some sort of a project? or that you can really make an impact on for your community. So just moving into the detail of the themes. The first one is communities in place. So this is the definition here, and it's pretty. This particular theme has got a lot to it. I won't read through the slide, but you can see there's a whole different number of areas and different activities there. It's around social fabric, local pride and belonging, and then that kind of building healthy and safe neighbourhoods. So, you know, I won't go into all of the detail there, but there's a whole range of activities and general indicators that are in the guidance of areas where there are already projects running, or you could particularly run an activity or something which would impact on this particular area. So that is theme one. I'm just going to give you some examples. Oops, I zoomed on a bit there. So these are some of the interventions, Somerset community interventions that are currently taking place that would fit with that kind of the themes general areas. So just to highlight, probably aware, we've got a number of town deals running in Bridgewater, Chard, Glastonbury, Taunton, Yeovil, and those are a mix of actual town deals, the Heritage High Streets Action Zone, which is a cultural fund, and then the Future High Streets Fund. So within those different areas, there are a whole range of different projects which are attempting to impact on those town centres. So that's the kind of flavour of something which could be carried on, or new projects that could come in as one of the interventions in the creation of this plan. The second area is we've got a number of community measures already in place to kind of reduce the cost of living, and obviously and tackling energy efficiency, combating fuel poverty, and those are obviously a particular concern at the moment. I guess we'll see how we get on, but I guess we'd expect to see things coming through in the plan to kind of tackle those areas. And then just to give another example of a project which does fit well into this kind of community interventions. There's an example in the Shared Prosperity Fund prospectus, the national prospectus in Swansea, which looks at sort of joining up transport. And we've already got this demand responsive transport project running in the South Somerset District Council area, which is looking to tackle rural isolation. The E numbers there are numbers from the guidance, which gives you a kind of areas of outcome that would be measured in making the plan and by government in judging whether the money is well spent. So just going to take another pause there at the end of that community area, see if anyone's got any thoughts or if there are any questions. Looking over it, Elliot, who's monitoring the.
Yes, we have a question from Patricia Marks. I was invited to a national session in the UK SPF earlier this week, and there was some clear guidance on what is required. Can SCC give us assurance that as the lead body, SCC will work with that detail and not introduce additional levels of red tape given the timeframes?
I think we can tell you that, well, obviously we've been commissioned to produce this piece of work, and timescale's really short, so we will essentially be getting on with it at a good pace, so that the plan can be submitted in time in the timescale required. So I think we can say yes to that one.
And we've got a hand up as well from James Godman even. Sorry, I will unmute your mic.
Hi, yes, no, it's only a quick question, which might be a slight tangent. I was also thinking about innovation, research, or other things that we can put in here. If you think about tackling rural isolation, and recently with the announcements around Royal Mail and drone use, for example, I mean, is there opportunity to do something quite novel within this funding scope at all?
I think we're going to get into some of the other sections. It does talk about R&D in part of the prospectus. I think it's quite a broad. It's quite broad. It's a broad area of opportunity. So effectively, as you identify the investment priorities, you could do anything and everything. I think it's fair to say, as long as you can be clear about what the outcomes are and how they're tackling those themes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's any more questions.
Okay, so I'll just move on to the next theme. So the next one is around, as mentioned earlier, around supporting local business. So it's in these kind of three areas, and first one's around obviously creating jobs and boosting community cohesion. So it's kind of focused on some of it's focused on existing jobs. There's a whole range of potential activities there that could occur. The second's around promoting this networking and collaboration. Obviously, we're all involved in that anyway, but you know, it's making that greater and making things work. And then talks about innovation and growth. So actually, to the point that was just mentioned about R&D and using novel approaches. This area would work really well for that, I think. And then we've got this area about increasing private sector investment, and then this kind of buzzwords we need to hit around new firms, productivity enhancing, energy efficiency, low carbon, and exports. So the theme's all about local business, and just we've got some business support projects that again are currently sort of running in our area, which may be areas we would want to invest in future, or give an example of the kind of projects that could run. So the first is this project unlocking Somerset prosperity, and it provides staff for businesses to start up, creating clusters, accelerating growth, and high-level catalysts and impact lab. That comes out of the Community Renewal Fund, which is already operating. And then, of course, we've got the Enterprise Innovation Centres. There's a whole range of those across Somerset. We've got IAERO in Yeovil, the DIC in Taunton, which is being constructed, and the Somerset Energy Innovation Centre in Bridgewater. And then, as I've mentioned, sprinkling of those across a whole range of towns and settlements. So those kind of projects and what comes out of them is something which kind of can impact on this area. And then finally, we've got this kind of commitment to net zero business support and engagement around climate emergency strategies. And so these kind of links for climate strategies do need to be kind of woven into the projects and thought about in any projects that are going to be delivered. I'm just going to take again a quick pause at the end of this particular theme if anyone's got any thoughts or any questions. Elliot.
Yeah, I'll give people a minute or two to enter any questions into the chat. Put a hand, so King, let me give you the microphone.
Hi, sorry, me again. We've done quite a few programs on startups and catalysts and supporting clusters over the years. Are we going to look at how successful those projects were so we can learn the lessons? I know some of them were probably better than others. So obviously creating a project just for the sake of having a project, it's not going to be value for money. And the other thing in terms of supporting private investment, what is very, very clear, what we're seeing on the ground is the private sector needs public funding. They need that sort of level of certainty that is provided through public sector grants to make them invest. So that for me, from my point of view, that would be a very important part of this.
Okay, I think in terms of the projects that have worked or haven't, if you've got any evidence, then that would be really helpful for us at the moment, setting the plan up. I think in terms of the plan itself, it's going to has to go, well, I'll get onto that later, it has to go off to be approved by government. And they will expect us to be clear about what the outcome measures are and how, you know, how we're going to evaluate that. So obviously if we were, and how those projects would be selected. So yeah, which I'll talk about a bit later. None of that's agreed or set out yet, but it is something that needs to be set out in the plan. So we need to be clear that whatever is funded, we expect it to work, and it's based on may well be based on the experience. Answer the question. Any other questions there?
If we could move to Andrew Hanson next. He's got his hand up.
Thank you.
Hi, Ian. Emma Rawlings, the Executive Director of Somerset Chamber, is on leave today, so I can't be here, but I'm sure the Chamber would be really keen to contribute to the promoting networking and collaboration element. And obviously you've got the individual town chambers as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. We can move to James Godwin next.
It was only a quick one around the almost some of the enablers. If you think about diversity, inclusion, and others, how and I guess that probably comes across in each of our submissions as they go back anyway. But I wonder whether that is another area where we can put something again a bit different, perhaps, to try and make sure we can really energize all parts of, you know, Somerset to get engagement. But maybe it's part of the individual proposals we do anyway. But wasn't sure about culture and diversity and inclusion. Really didn't sort of come out as a key.
Yeah, we've got a bit of work to do over the next couple of weeks to engage with as many different representative organisations and individuals as possible. So it's kind of a work in progress, I think it's fair to say. And in terms of this plan, it does need to be monitored or managed by some sort of group. Again, that needs to be figured out. So there's plenty of opportunity, I think, and actually the prospectus gives you a whole range of potential organisations and individuals that you should engage with. So there's a fair way to go on that one yet, I think. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question in the chat as well from Bennyworth, that's Somerset. As a very rural county, I'd be interested to learn how the investment plans will be designed to ensure that programmes are delivered in rural and urban areas equitably.
Oh, again, I think a work in progress. The plan's got to lay out the kind of general interventions. So in doing that and in working out the mechanism, which obviously isn't there yet, we'll have to address that difference. Well, we have to address the uniqueness of Somerset. So yeah, work in progress, I think.
Ian, if I could just come in at this point alongside the comment you've made, it's Paul Hickson here. I think there's a link between the recent question and the previous one from Jim as well. And I think in addition to what you said, I would just remark that I think as we draw up the investment plan, alongside looking at the three pillars which Ian's talking through, we'll need to look at what you might call the cross-cutting themes across them all. So there's a kind of inclusion dimension which we've just covered in the two questions. I think similarly looking at looking across the plan from a climate emergency perspective and indeed from a nature recovery perspective is something we might want to do as well, given those kind of three current overarching important themes. So I think that's about the plan. We've also talked about the fact that this is a 3-year process and work underneath the plan will need to come forward and be taken through the right procedures to check the proposals as we implement the plan. And I think necessarily and rightly we need to look at those kind of cross-cutting themes to make sure that each investment that's made during the life of the plan delivers as far as possible against those kind of overarching themes as well. So absolutely we need to build those principles into making sure we get the best possible outcomes from this work.
Great, thank you very much. If we could get Trish, please, unmute it. Trish Caller.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself. I'm a rebel. First of all, I'd like to copy what the Somerset Chamber of Commerce mentioned, and I'm on the exec committee of Taunton Chamber of Commerce, and I can see that Adam, our president, is also in this meeting at the moment. But we would like to add that we can add support to getting a message out to business. But my main hat for this meeting is arts and culture. Caroline Ellis is the portfolio holder for arts and culture on Somerset West and Taunton at the moment, and hopefully will continue that role in the new county council. Arts and culture is a really good way of affecting everybody in the communities, no matter where they are. And that can range from music to comedy, dance, art exhibitions, art classes, and all sorts of cultural things like that. It may well be worth inviting Richard Holt and Andy Nutt to any further conversations, because I know that they're already working on a rural outreach scheme with arts initiatives for rural communities. So if I think they would be very good to be involved. Caroline Ellis, Richard Holt and Andy Nutt. Thank you.
Thanks, Trish. I'll just flip back up to theme 1. So I skimmed over it a bit early, but sort of cultural, all of the things you've just said does sit in that kind of theme 1 for the purposes of the Shared Prosperity Fund. So it's definitely there, and it's definitely in the thoughts of government. So anything else?
Great, thanks. And yeah, if we could move to Bennyworth, please. See Bennyworth and.
Thank you. It's Carl Bennyworth, Heart of the Southwest LEP. Just to build on the question I asked and Paul's observations, I think for me the issue is not just the equitable delivery across rural areas, but that some of these investment plans recognise the difference in terms of need in rural areas alongside need in urban areas. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all programme. There will be, and you've mentioned rural isolation and transport, but there will be other factors in rural areas that may well be different to urban.
Yeah, absolutely. No, completely.
Just reviewing the report. Sure.
Anything else? We move on to the next theme.
No more questions. Just some points. Good point from Belinda. I'd be keen to ensure that the emerging programmes from the funds are linked across the Somerset Health and Care Development work for neighbourhoods and places, improving the royalty issues, connecting the mutual development objectives will maximise impact.
Okay. Yeah, if we haven't said it already, obviously we'll pick all these points up after the event. We'll be putting a Q&A, which I will mention after. We'll be putting a Q&A onto the web page that the Somerset Council, the County Council, have set up. So, anything? Yeah, happy to go. Right. Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the last of the 3 themes. There's people and skills. So it's again in these kind of 3 areas, which are long descriptions. But the first one is about reducing levels of economic inactivity and improving employment outcomes, with all that goes around that. The second part is around supporting people furthest from the labour market, which has obviously been a theme for some years now. And then supporting local areas in skills provision and getting progress to work across a whole range of different interventions, which are described on the slide. So I won't just read through them. So that is the people and skills theme. And so the types of skills project, it's just one of those, yeah, so just worth mentioning that because of the way the prospectus is formed up, these projects can't actually commence from a SPF perspective until the last year of the plan, so the 24-25 year. And they are projects obviously that support people and inclusion. They will support employment or further training and upskilling, as mentioned in the kind of 3 areas earlier on in the slides. So yeah, it is worth mentioning that they don't commence until that 3rd year. So just a couple of examples of what we've got running at the moment. We've got the local skills improvement plan. So it's providing a framework for action, and it will be underway later in this year. We've got the Hinckley workforce development strategy, which is a good example, I suppose, of where a sectoral approach to improving skills and capabilities of the existing workforce. And there's a significant portion of local people working on the site and in the supply chains as a result of that activity. And then we've got the various groups for all ages, pre and post 16, and a range of partnerships. Andrew's talking about education business partnerships, Skill Up and Step Up for Somerset. So those are the kind of projects that are already running, which kind of fit into the general theme of this area. So yeah, just a reminder, people and skills. So I'm just going to stop there for sorry, confusing myself. So linked into this program is the multiply program. This is funding provide numeracy skills, and so it's for adults who don't have level 2 maths, and it's equivalent to GCSE C4. So it's providing accredited or non-accredited training, and the rationale's there. So there's strong evidence, I think, around numeracy skills that brings people into employment and higher wages. And so in parallel to this shared prosperity fund plan, there's a 3-year investment plan being produced in Somerset. Somerset's got an allocation of 2.485 million to deliver this multiplied programme, and it is will be delivered in advance of and in complement to this people and skills work stream. So we will now again take a short break to see if people have got any comments on the people and skills theme and multiply. Anything in the chat? Elliot?
No, nothing on the chat.
Questions on this area?
Yes, and there's a question from Jim Whitaker. Can we see some creative business startup support? Much historic response to this has been the development of office space, supported workspace and digital working, but this meets the needs of only a limited range of new businesses. Many community businesses require the basics such as finance, employment and planning advice, funding for capital items such as a van and tools, and confidence building support such as underwriting the wage commitment to a 13-month apprenticeship scheme.
Okay. I mean, so the investment plan will lay out the priorities, and then it's up to you to run the project. So I think, yeah, the answer to that's yes. If you can come up with something innovative that works, or that could work, so it is all there to be applied for once the plan is set up. Anything else?
Just John Carter, is there a similar programme to multiply aimed at literacy?
Can I throw that one over to somebody from County Council? I'm not absolutely sure.
Hi Ian, it's Mel. John, not at the moment. I am aware that the NHS potentially have some access to funding for literacy and numeracy across the workforce, but nothing more generally across our work yet.
Thanks, Mel.
And it's not a question, but just a point here from Deborah Scarrett as well. We deliver employment support to communities in SSDC, CEIAG to schools, operate the opportunity hubs, and specifically linked to inclusion, the supported employment project. We welcome the opportunity to contribute to intelligence for this area.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you've got any information or yeah, just engage with the process. That would be really good. Thank you.
And a hand up from James Godman as well. If we could unmute James, please.
Yep. Sorry, I dropped out just a minute ago, so I might have missed a little bit. There's only a couple of things. One in relation to does this also cover, perhaps you think about translation service and others, think about Ukraine and some of the those coming into Somerset? Is it broad that covers those elements? Maybe you've already covered that. And the other bit, I was also thinking at the other end of the market, reference to mentoring, and we're trying to establish a mentoring network across Somerset, upskilling and training those who've retired. Can we also, because that adds value back into the current generation or future generation, that also included?
Again, I think there's a whole wide range of activities that are in the prospectus and as indicators. So I think all of those things could be covered. I'm not sure about translation services, but I'm sure that could be sucked into that if that's appropriate.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I think we're good to move on.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the detail now. So this is just about the delivery and the content overview for the investment plan. So the prospectus requires the lead authority, which in this case is Somerset County Council, as the continuing authority to submit and manage the plan. They need to manage the funding allocations, evaluate and monitor activity, and to provide assurance that the funding has been spent appropriately. And obviously, in the current instance, Somerset County Council will be working with the existing districts as well to work through that plan and get that up and running. The mechanisms for distributing the money need to be laid out in the plan, the funding, and so the prospectus talks about the potential for the use of grants, the potential for the commissioning of services, procuring or activity, or the direct delivery by a range of different organisations of activity. So the mechanisms are pretty broad, but the investment plan does need to lay out what mechanisms might be used and how that could work. The plan does need the support of local partnership groups. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be continuing engagement with yourself, and there'll be talk about how that's done in the future over the life of the plan. That'll need to be laid out. So that support for local delivery is done through a wide range of expertise, hence all the people on the call today. And so that will need to be developed. And the local MPs need to be engaged. So there is an initial process of support required to get the plan ahead of getting the plan signed off and sent over to government. So those are things that need to be in the plan. And so our engagement approach over the next couple of months, because as I mentioned earlier, the plan is to be submitted by the 1st of August. And in reality, that means we need to have a plan ready for consideration in the early part of July, very early part of July. So we've got the overview session today. We've got some workshops planned, which hopefully, and we'd encourage you to come along to those workshops on the 8th and 9th of June. So those will be focused on the 3 themes. So they're split across the 3 different days. And we're going to be sending out some form of doodle poll or some survey monkey after the meeting. And yeah, please do put your name down for one or all of those sessions. Yeah, so get yourself engaged and please do input into those discussions. My cold's getting the better of me now, unfortunately. So as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, we're going to be creating some frequently asked questions after the meeting. Those will be added to a website page that we've set up. We will be planning to do some surveys, but as yet those haven't been put together. Seeking your views on the different themes, and those will combine with the workshops which are planned on the 8th and 9th of June. And so I suppose we're asking, is there anything else that you think we need as well from an engagement perspective to do to get you engaged in the plan? A few people have already mentioned individuals and organisations that we should get in touch with. So we've got that, we've captured that, we will do that. Is there anything else anyone can think of at the moment to help us with the engagement approach?
Okay, we've got some hands up. If we go for Jenny Pitcher first, please.
Okay.
Thanks, and hi Ian.
Hi Jenny.
Long time no see. I just wondered, with the engagement process, obviously we're already into a situation of very thin jam over a very large area and a large number of priorities, goes without saying. There was some indication that we were supposed to be engaging with the public as well. Is that something realistic and that we can really properly consider, bearing in mind the sheer number of stakeholders already, you know, sort of looking to be actively involved, which frankly could eat up 7 million quite quickly. I feel even from this call. How do you feel about that?
We're working on a plan for doing that at the moment. I think the prospectus talks mainly about partners. So I think that's where our focus is at the moment, about representative organisations. But I think we are planning to do some general communications and try and pick the public up that way. But with the time scale, it's going to be quite tricky.
It seems to be by the time we actually engage with the wider public, they'll just be getting their heads around it by the time the submissions have gone in. And are we submitting a 1-year plan, or are we submitting a 3-year plan?
It's a 3-year plan, so the plan will lay out the investment priorities. But I think, as Paul alluded to earlier on, as the mechanisms develop, slightly making this up at the moment, and really
no, that's okay.
As the mechanisms develop, you know, things could change over the life of that plan, and different investments be made across those 3 different years. So that's, again, it's a work in progress. At the moment, it's laying out the investment priorities against the three themes, and that's, you know, that'll be how the plan kind of looks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. If we could go to Abolitho next, please.
Got it.
Sorry, who did you say?
Yes, Abolitho. Hi.
Oh, sorry, Belitho. My name is sorry.
Oh, sorry.
There, regards to the community and place element, there are 11 teams set up across all of Somerset, and each district has several. So Somerset, West and Taunton have. We're already 4 or 5 years into established partnership working and community development, and well aware in our most deprived areas. So please, could we be sort of, you know, heavily involved in that element of the plan? Because what it sounds like is, I appreciate as districts we're preparing an element of the plan, but very soon it feels like there's strength in enhancing and developing and building on good work that's already going on in terms of some of those aspirations.
Yeah, I think the simple answer to that is yes, we'll be looking to engage with as many groups or organisations as possible over the next couple of weeks. So yeah.
Because we're already well on that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we do that by yourself?
Yes, Scott Weech is our manager, but Andy Lloyd for Somerset County Council coordinates all 11 team coordinators.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We've got James Godman next, please.
It was only just a quick mechanics piece of how we can sort of help to reduce the time frame of thinking about the material needed, the evidence needed. Have you got any formats? Have you got any? I'm not saying you need to say it today, but I guess flow those down quickly, and then we can at least do some of the legwork before it goes into the central pot, as it were.
Okay, we'll share something on the Q&A afterwards about that. But at the moment, we are just basically receiving surveys, plans, strategies from a range of organisations, which we're putting together as an evidence base. So, yeah, anything you've got really would be helpful, and we'll be looking to cross-reference all of that together. It's a bit of a mammoth task.
Great, thank you. We've got Oliver Fletcher, a hand up next.
Thank you. I guess it's a mechanics question. If you're submitting a 3-year plan, but as Mel responded to one of the comments about ESOL in the chat, the priorities for the first 2 years are different to the third. How does that work in terms of engaging ideas that might be okay in a few years' time, but might not be now?
I think the investment priorities are intended to be quite broad.
Right.
So to kind of cover for that eventuality. So a project, you know, project specifics over the 3 years will undoubtedly change, but the investment plans intend to be quite broad kind of expression of what might be invested in within the themes.
Can I just jump in there as well, Ian? It's
yeah, please do.
I believe we will be invited to review our year 2 and year 3 interventions during the process as well.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Just picking up a point in the chat as well from Jim Whitaker in terms of efficiency, engagement with existing social and community structures can work. Minehead and Coast Development Trust and the Minehead Plan for People in Place provides an example, and we'd be happy to share the model. Of course, Jim would be more than happy to receive that if you would like to send that over post this briefing.
Yeah. Anything like that, we would be keen to engage. I think we've already got your plan actually, Jim, but yeah, please do send it over again.
Okay, I'm just reviewing some questions in the chat now, making sure it's none that have been picked up already. One from Kinga here. Rather than creating a new list of projects, can we utilise ideas collected previously, e.g. for the CRF?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we'll be creating a list of new projects. The plan just requires a general a general description of how you might invest. So it's not necessarily going to be a list of projects at this stage. That will come over time. So I think what you're saying is entirely sensible. Though there's obviously things running which we will need to capture. But yeah, the plan is quite broad at just the minute. Get work in progress.
Just jumping in there, Ian, I think that's an important point that you've articulated. This is a themed plan setting out our overall priorities. Over the 3 years, we'll need to deliver and commission projects against that investment plan once it's approved by government. So we're not charged at the moment with preparing an assessed set of projects to submit to government. It's to get a plan for the use of the money over the period that we have it from government.
Thank you, Paul.
Great, yeah, I think everything's covered now. Then we're good to move on.
Okay, so just a final couple of slides here. So just about submitting the plan and the process. So as I kind of already mentioned, you can submit a plan actually between the 30th of June and the 1st of August. That has to be by the 1st of August. And then the plan will be reviewed by government by October 2022. I've got a date on that, so it's just October 2022. And then the first plans will be approved in that month, and then the investment expenditure commences. So just a reminder, it's a 3-year programme and the funding is annualised. We saw that from the table right at the start. And so year 1 will need interventions that can mobilise pretty quickly, bearing in mind the plan's not going to be approved until October, because those need to impact by the end of March next year, 2023. And year 2 and 3 funding will be influenced by year 1. So I think Mal's already mentioned that there will be kind of a review process as the plan goes forward. So that's it for today. So is there any other feedback or anything anyone wants to comment on? The website page, which has been managed by Somerset, is there on the screen, and that will have more information added to it as we go along.
Okay, so we've got a question from Kinghurst. Jumping on what Paul just said, without the projects, how do you envisage to allocate spend against the priorities?
I think.
You want me to come back on that one, Ian?
Yes, please, Mel.
So I think in respect of the time frame for spend for year 1, and there's been a couple of comments in the chat, we will have to balance our year 1 delivery plan with some activities that can hit the ground running from September. So whilst over the longer run we will be taking that programme level approach and will commission work, we do need to ensure that we can deliver activity, spend our allocation in year 1, and therefore achieve our outcomes and targets. So we will, like I say, just have to bear that in mind for the development of the plan in the short term.
And just another point here from Josephine Bradford from ENPA. We'd be interested to know if cross-country / cross-district working would be encouraged. Previously, they have been in principle, but not fully possible in the delivery phase due to system and admin issues.
Well, I think it's a plan for Somerset, so I think the answer to that is yes.
Just jumping in there, Ian, as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the tests that government will, well, it sets out in the guidance, and it's not a judgment, it's a factual point. They will be looking to see whether individual plans have been developed in consultation with their neighbours, to see whether the types of cross-boundary issues that I think Josephine's referring to have been looked at, and whether people have explored the scope to team up and deliver things jointly through their respective plans. So I talked about the kind of tests earlier on that will be applied by government. That's another one that I think is worthwhile marking up as well. So that's that's something that during the next few months we'll have to engage with neighbouring areas developing plans, and it'd be useful for us to do so, won't it?
Thank you, Paul. Anything else?
No, we haven't got any new comments or questions.
Okay, nothing else then. We've got 5 minutes to go, so I'm going to hand back to Paul to wrap up the session.
Thanks very much, Ian, for that and for taking us through the session this morning. Much appreciated. And I suppose just to wrap things up, thanking everyone for joining. I've noticed that we've had in excess of 50 joiners, which is really good starting point for us in this process. Very helpful input from lots of people during the session. I think it was really helpful in as much as that, as well as getting some early intelligence and citing of people's thoughts and kind of hopes and ambitions about what the fund will help to achieve. Really useful in seeing some of the offers of how during the process the team can engage with stakeholders, can draw on the wealth of existing evidence that we have, and some useful, thoughtful inputs around how the plan process is developed and the things that we need to be taking on board during that. This won't be easy. It's a new process to kind of respond to. So none of us would pretend that we've got a kind of monopoly of the wisdom and past experience with this fund to draw on. So all questions are valid, and in a number of cases they're helping the thinking as we get started on things. So very much appreciated. Do you want to just draw things up by pointing people to the website that we'll have for the plan going forward? So that's something to look to at any point in the process. And finally, to thank everyone for their input and for joining the session this morning. Thanks very much. Hope the rest of your day goes well in everyone's case. Thanks, Sam. Bye.
Thank you.